And what could work, do you think? Perhaps bring them in within a certain window?
I don't know. Yeah, but then honestly, we are almost doing Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Then we have to install bits on the car. Maybe you could throw bananas around. Yeah, I don't know. Slippery surface.
Sure.
Diese Spitzengruppe, wie war's?
Nicht viel los eigentlich. Sehr langweilig. Bin schon froh, dass es vorbei ist.
Was hat Ihnen das Leben heute am schwersten gemacht dabei?
Im Auto sitzen, so lange.
More about pit stops than it was out-and-out racing. What are your reflections on that?
Yeah, but you can't race here anyway, so it doesn't matter what you do. 1 stop, 10 stops. Even at the end, right? I was in the lead, but my tires were completely gone, and you still can't pass. I think nowadays, with an F1 car, you can just pass a Formula 2 car around here.
Can you imagine Verstappen frustrated, criticizing his own car after a Grand Prix? That's exactly what happened in Monaco 2025, where Red Bull was exposed like never before. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, is Red Bull losing its advantage in Formula 1? What's happening with the RB21 that even Verstappen is doubting its performance? In this video, I'll tell you why Red Bull's performance in Monaco set off alarm bells within the team, and what Verstappen said that surprised everyone. To understand Max Verstappen's frustration and the heated debate that has erupted following the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix, it is crucial to analyze the context from a technical and strategic perspective. Monaco is not just another race on the Formula 1 calendar. For decades, it has been a test of pinpoint precision, where a driver's talent comes face to face with the limitations of engineering. Here, more than any other circuit, a car's ability to respond with agility, generate traction in slow corners, and adapt to an extremely tight environment makes the difference between winning and being trapped with no options. It's not just about top speed or overall aerodynamic efficiency, but how the car performs in extreme low-speed conditions, with little room for maneuver, and on a track that doesn't forgive mistakes. In 2025, the already traditional difficulties at the Monaco track were compounded by an inescapable technical reality. Today's single-seaters are wider, heavier, and stiffer than ever. These characteristics, a direct consequence of the technical regulations implemented in recent years, make the cars more difficult to maneuver in tight sectors and much more dependent on precise mechanical balance. What this means, in practical terms, is that car setup, weight distribution, suspension management, and rear-wheel drive sensitivity become absolutely decisive factors. And this is precisely where the Red Bull RB21 showed its main weaknesses. Unlike other circuits, where engine power or straight-line efficiency can compensate for certain imbalances, in Monaco these shortcomings are laid bare and cannot be hidden behind strategy. Strategy, in fact, becomes a secondary tool when the car can't perform on track. Verstappen and Red Bull knew this even before Saturday's qualifying. Although free practice offered a glimmer of hope, showing competitive pace in ideal conditions, reality quickly set in. Qualifying, that decisive moment where a tenth of a second can mean losing 3 positions on the grid, was a severe blow for the Austrian team. Not only did Max finish outside the top 3, but he also finished 4th, almost 3/4 of a second behind the pole position achieved by Lando Norris. In Monaco, that gap is abysmal. It's the equivalent of starting the race with an impossible-to-overcome disadvantage on the track, where overtaking is practically non-existent without serious errors or external interventions like a safety car. And on this circuit, grid position largely determines the final result. You can have the best driver, the most aggressive, the most consistent, but if your car can't turn well in a slow corner or doesn't have the grip necessary to exit a tight hairpin with traction, you simply have no chance. That was Verstappen's reality all weekend. And that's what's generating so much interest now, how a team that has dominated so convincingly on other tracks found itself disoriented, outclassed, and forced to settle for damage control here. This initial context is key to understanding what came next. Max's candid statements, Horner's self-criticism, the strategic decisions that didn't yield results, and the rise of direct rivals like McLaren and Ferrari. Because what happened in Monaco wasn't simply a poor result in the standings. It was a warning sign. It was confirmation that Red Bull's dominance is not invulnerable. And above all, it was a wake-up call that leaves many questions open for the rest of the season. Amid the pressure and disappointment surrounding Red Bull's performance at the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix, the rumors that have swirled around the paddock for months began to intensify. Is Max Verstappen seriously considering a team change? Although until now these rumors remained on the fringes of speculation, what happened on the streets of Monte Carlo seems to have given them new impetus. The RB21's lack of competitiveness on a critical track, coupled with Verstappen's own public frustration, has caused the situation to begin to change. And it's not just a matter of racing results. Behind these rumors lies a much more complex dynamic involving internal tensions, external pressure from rival teams, and the unease of a driver unused to settling for less than perfection. Verstappen's statements during and after the weekend were more than simple comments on the car's performance. In his words, many analysts detected a tone of deep discontent, a warning. By saying that he knew they were in trouble from the first lap on Friday, Max not only diagnosed a technical weakness, but also hinted that confidence in the car's development for certain circuits is beginning to crumble. And when a multiple champion like him loses confidence in the technical project behind him, the Formula One market goes on alert. Because drivers of that caliber are scarce, and any sign of discomfort can trigger a chain of events behind the scenes at the sport's most powerful teams. In this context, teams like Ferrari and Mercedes appear to be the most interested in monitoring Verstappen's every gesture and every word. From Italy, media close to Maranello claim that there is a multi-million-dollar offer on the table, with promises to build the team around him, a situation reminiscent of Schumacher's golden age. For its part, Mercedes, still in the process of rebuilding after Hamilton's departure, hasn't ruled out the possibility of making a bold move if the opportunity arises. Although these moves are still being handled discreetly, the truth is that external pressure on Red Bull is growing, especially when the car begins to show signs of vulnerability, as was so evident in Monaco. But the rumors don't just point to a possible Verstappen departure. There is also talk of discontent within the technical team, disagreements over the direction of the car's development, and even tensions between departments that affect strategic decision-making. This, in the world of Formula One, can be as dangerous as a poorly designed car. Red Bull has, for years, been an example of a solid and aligned internal structure. But when results begin to slip, internal cracks come to light, and what was once a strength becomes a vulnerability. And that climate, however invisible it may seem, is perfectly perceptible for a driver with Verstappen's experience and ambition. In Monaco, those tensions were evident in small gestures. In the coldness of his statements, in the lack of clear answers as to why a suitable setup wasn't found, in Christian Horner's evasiveness when referring to the team's work over the weekend. And this fuels the cycle of rumors, because when the answers are vague and frustration is evident on people's faces, silence speaks louder than any official statement. No team publicly admits it's losing its star, but all the players around it begin to make moves when they detect that the ground is no longer firm. These current rumors are more than simple theories. They serve as a thermometer for the emotional and technical state of a team that is going through a critical stage. And the most revealing thing is that they don't originate outside the Formula One ecosystem, but within it. From the analysts who know every corner of the paddock, to the engineers themselves who, under anonymity, filter signs of discontent. What is happening with Red Bull and Verstappen is not a declared crisis, but a turning point. And as always happens in F1, when the smoke is constant, at some point a fire will appear. The way a Formula One team reacts to adversity is often as revealing as its triumphs. And in the case of Red Bull, the reaction to the difficult weekend in Monaco has revealed not only the internal tensions that are beginning to emerge, but also the individual stance of its central figure, Max Verstappen. Unlike other seasons where the car's technical superiority overshadowed any errors or shortcomings, the RB21 was exposed on one of the most demanding tracks on the calendar, and the team's response, both on and off the track, has been scrutinized by specialists, rivals, and fans. The central question now is not only what happened in Monaco, but how they are processing that internal defeat, and above all, what they are willing to do to prevent a repeat. Max Verstappen, accustomed to dominating, winning with authority, and setting the pace from Friday to Sunday, did not hide his discontent. But what was even more striking was the tone with which he expressed his feelings. In his statements after qualifying, he was direct and blunt, Since we arrived, I felt the car wasn't responding as expected in the tightest corners. It's a weakness we've been carrying, and it's been amplified here. What those words make clear is not just a one-off technical problem, but a worrying trend that the driver himself recognizes as structural. In other words, this isn't just an isolated bad weekend, but a pattern that has been repeating itself on urban and low-speed circuits, where the RB21's mechanical response has been inconsistent. For a driver with ambitions to continue accumulating championships, these kinds of limitations are unacceptable in the long term. And this is where the position of the team, led by Christian Horner, comes into play. The Red Bull team principal has traditionally been a skilled political manager, someone who knows when to support his drivers and when to protect the team. On this occasion, his statement was clear but also laced with nuances. Horner acknowledged that the weekend had been complicated, that the car's balance wasn't where it should be, and that Max did an extraordinary job with what he had. But he also revealed that the team failed to find an effective solution in time. This admission, although diplomatic, underscores an inescapable reality. Red Bull failed to adapt its car to the specific demands of Monaco, and that, in Formula One's internal language, is equivalent to accepting a failure in planning or technical execution. The relationship between driver and team, in these cases, enters a delicate phase. Verstappen has been Red Bull's standard-bearer for years, the man who broke Mercedes' hegemony and built a new dominance in the modern era. But like any elite competitor, his loyalty has limits set by performance. As long as the car responds, trust remains intact. But when technical doubts arise, and there are no convincing answers in the short term, the driver begins to look beyond the present. In internal communications, this translates into firmer demands, more tense meetings with engineers, and an environment that is becoming more demanding and less forgiving of mistakes. What is happening between Verstappen and Red Bull is not a rupture, but rather a transformation, from a relationship based on assured victory to one that needs to rebuild technical and strategic trust. Furthermore, we must not lose sight of the fact that the rest of the paddock is closely watching every move. Verstappen's statements, his gestures during interviews, Horner's measured responses, everything is analyzed as part of a chessboard where every word can trigger chain reactions. Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes are aware of every detail. And if Red Bull fails to rebuild its internal image quickly, rivals will not only grow on the track, but could also take advantage of this to sow doubt in the Dutchman's own circle. This is the scenario Red Bull now faces, not only regaining technical ground, but also strengthening the team's emotional cohesion in the face of a season that is already beginning to show cracks. This position, seemingly in control but with clear signs of wear, demands a decisive response. And it's not just about improving the car for the next circuit. It's about demonstrating that the technical leadership remains intact, that the team has solutions, and that Verstappen can trust that he is in the best possible place to continue winning. Because if that perception is shattered, what seemed like a one-time situation in Monaco could become the beginning of a change of era in Formula One. Talking about Max Verstappen's possible departure from Red Bull isn't just sporting speculation. It's projecting an earthquake in the competitive structure of modern Formula One. His figure isn't simply that of a fast or talented driver, he's that of a multi-time champion around whom Red Bull has built an era. His departure wouldn't have a minor or progressive impact. It would be an immediate turning point, a shock capable of destabilizing not only his current team, but the entire grid. Because Verstappen isn't interchangeable, he's not just another name on the list of available names. He is, without exaggeration, the most coveted piece in the competitive chess game. And if he were to make a move, the repercussions would be profound, immediate and far-reaching. The first thing Red Bull would suffer is a loss of sporting leadership. Verstappen isn't just fast, he's also a driver who pushes the team to constantly evolve. His level of demand, his technical understanding, and his ability to maximize performance under pressure have been fundamental to the team's recent success. Without him, Red Bull wouldn't just lose points, it would lose its identity. Because when a team revolves around a dominant figure for years, replacing him isn't simply a matter of signing another talented driver. It's about rebuilding a working relationship, a development dynamic, an internal culture that has been shaped by that driver's constant presence. And that takes time, even for a structure as efficient as Red Bull's. Furthermore, Verstappen's departure would open up a range of opportunities for rivals. Ferrari, for example, has been searching for a driver with that combination of aggression, maturity, and title hunger for years. If they managed to attract Max, they would not only add an elite player to their lineup, but would also send a symbolic message to the rest of the paddock. Ferrari is once again in a position to seriously compete for championships. Mercedes, for its part, has entered a rebuilding process following Hamilton's departure, and an addition like Verstappen's could accelerate its return to the top. Even McLaren, in the midst of consolidating its position with young talents like Norris and Piastri, could be forced to redefine its strategy if Max were to become a free agent. In short, his potential team move would unleash a cascade of moves that would completely alter the current balance of power. But the consequences wouldn't be solely technical or sporting. There would also be large-scale commercial and media implications. Verstappen is a global figure with a fan base that grows every year and a huge brand influence on and off the track. His departure would affect sponsorship deals, marketing campaigns, and the overall value of the Red Bull Racing project. The brand has capitalized on his image as a symbol of excellence and aggressiveness on the track, and without him, the narrative that has defined them in this recent period would have to be reconsidered. Formula One, being a competition so influenced by external narratives, would also see its attention dynamics affected. For Verstappen, changing teams would mean a new media era, a new challenge in a different jersey, something that would inevitably translate into a reconfiguration of the central narrative of each season. From the driver's own perspective, the change would also entail risks. Leaving an environment he knows perfectly, where he has grown and established himself, would mean leaving behind a structure that has given him the tools to dominate. However, it could also be the logical step for someone who, after winning titles, seeks new challenges, new incentives. Changing teams could give him the motivation he needs to embark on a second phase of his career, one that consolidates him as one of the greatest of all time not only for his performances, but for his ability to succeed in different contexts. All of this makes the possibility of a change of team for Max Verstappen much more than a hallway story. It's a scenario with profound ramifications that touch every layer of Formula One. From Red Bull's technical and sporting management to its rivals' signing strategy, media interest, and global public perception, every element would be affected. Most importantly, the fact that this possibility is being talked about so much isn't born from unfounded rumors, but from gestures, statements, and contexts that, combined, generate reasonable doubt. A doubt that sits at the center of the debate and forces all teams, fans, and analysts to ask the same thing: what if he really decides to leave? The immediate future of Red Bull and Max Verstappen presents itself as a minefield of technical, strategic, and contractual decisions that must be addressed with extreme precision. The Monaco Grand Prix has acted as an accelerator of reflection within the team, and the pressure to respond comes not only from the media, fans, or rivals, but from the internal need to remain competitive in a championship that waits for no one. The upcoming races, especially on circuits with similar characteristics to Monte Carlo, such as Hungary and Singapore, have become critical points on the calendar. Not only will the performance of a car itself be evaluated, but also Red Bull's ability to react to a technical environment that no longer seems entirely dominated by them. In this scenario, one of Red Bull's technical priorities will be to resolve the structural issues that affect the RB21's behavior in slow corners and mechanically demanding sections. Lack of traction on tight exits, rear axle imbalance, and difficulties managing tire wear in urban conditions are symptoms that, if not addressed in time, could become chronic. Christian Horner has already anticipated this. The next updates will be focused not so much on aerodynamic efficiency on straights, but on improving the car's response in low-speed conditions. To achieve this, the team will have to accelerate its testing and technical validation process, something that is not always compatible with the tight Formula One schedule. At the same time, Verstappen will not wait indefinitely. His body language and recent statements indicate that he is at a point of maximum demand, willing to support, but also to demand real solutions. If improvements don't arrive, or if the car remains vulnerable on certain tracks, his level of tolerance could be exhausted. And that would have immediate consequences for the team's internal relations. Max's stature has grown so much within the paddock that, in practice, he wields an influence comparable to that of a technical director. His opinion influences not only the development of a car, but also personnel decisions, strategy, and overall project direction. His level of involvement is extremely high, but so is his ability to make drastic decisions if he feels his expectations are not being met. Furthermore, in the short term, the driver market will begin to move more strongly. Although contracts are signed, everyone in F1 knows that exit clauses exist, and that deals are constantly negotiated on the margins. If Verstappen decides to listen to offers or simply show openness to an outside possibility, moves will be activated at the other teams almost immediately. Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes have the resources, the prestige, and in some cases, the political incentive necessary to tempt a driver of his caliber. What happens in the next 4 or 5 races will be crucial in determining whether Verstappen renews his faith in the Red Bull project or quietly begins to contemplate a new chapter in his career. On the other hand, the FIA and the championship organization itself will also be closely monitoring how these events unfold. Verstappen's media clout is such that his continued presence at Red Bull, or a possible transfer, could even affect the global appeal of the sport. It's no exaggeration to say that he is currently one of the narrative pillars of the sport. Any change in his environment triggers a new narrative that transforms the overall perception of the championship, meaning that the decisions made now will have a resonant effect worldwide, not only in the sporting arena, but also in the commercial and institutional arenas. Everything indicates that Red Bull is entering a phase of redefinition. It's not a total crisis, but it is a stage where decisions can no longer be postponed. How they respond to this challenge will determine not only their performance for the remainder of the season, but also their stability in the medium and long term. And Verstappen, amidst it all, will be both a thermometer and a catalyst. Their permanence, their level of commitment, and their degree of confidence in the project will determine whether Red Bull remains the center of gravity in Formula One or whether we are witnessing the beginning of a new era in which other teams take control.